Hi folks, Six Eyes here. Today I want to talk a little bit about Poland. Now Poland is a country that most people will have heard of, no matter where you live in the world, because back in 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland, Britain gave the ultimatum to Hitler that he either withdrew from Poland or we would be at war. That was in September 1939. Now Hitler didn't withdraw from Poland because he had a non-aggression pact with Stalin in Germany, which meant he could invade Poland with impunity, it being on the other side of Germany and not within the reach of Britain or anybody else to do anything about. Now, at that point, Poland was easily invaded, quickly overrun, subjugated and treated extremely badly. But Poland had a very proud history, certainly as a martial nation, or for its army and so forth. Polish sabres are world famous. Jan Sobieski, the great Polish leader, is known for his military prowess, and so on. I'm not an expert on Poland, and I don't pretend to be, but I visited the country a couple of times, and particularly to Krakow and various places around, and one tends to go there and visit things like Auschwitz, and you see how badly Poland was treated, because you should bear in mind that when Auschwitz was first used as a concentration camp, it was originally built as a Polish army barracks. Auschwitz one was. The main aim was to wipe out the intelligentsia and leadership of Poland in order that the Poles could become a slave nation to Germany. So they had to get rid of anybody who had all the clever people, the leaders, the academics and so forth. And a lot of them were rounded up in there, and many of them, of course, as a result, died. At the end of the war, Poland was treated rather badly by the Allies, because although we went to war to save it, in the end, we gave it to Stalin, and that's really a question, which is worse, Stalin or Hitler? And you could debate that one all day, every day. Anyway, Poland did eventually manage to shake off Stalin and became part of the European Union, and as a result, a lot of Polish people came to Britain, and we've met a number of Polish people, become very good friends with some of them. And the reason that my wife and I visited Poland the first time we went was to go to a wedding of two of our very good Polish friends who got married in a place called Janów Lubelski, which is near, well, it's not near Krakow, but Krakow's the nearest airport. There's a fairly healthy drive along through Rzeszów to get there, which we did. My wife drove. Anyway, we really enjoyed Poland, and now, as I say, so it's easy to see Poland as the conquered slave nation, rather. But it's also in Britain. It's quite often seen that Poland is an East European country, which just isn't true. Poland is a Central European country. It's bang on the side of Germany, and it has an educated and able population. They also have a reputation for industry as well. So this knife here, which is a Polish knife, perhaps tells you the story of the subjugated peasant nation. This knife shows you perhaps what you expect of Poland, a basic, crude, rough worker nation. And that's exactly what this penknife is. It's a crude, rough, basic, slip joint, all in steel with some sort of basic wood covers. It's an electrician's knife, for those of you who know things about these things, in that this here is for stripping wire, and it's very clearly made in Poland, which is the only mark on it. I mean, who knows what the steel is, and it matters not a jot. Brass pins. It's a good, solid, working knife, and many people would look at Poland and say that's what Poland is. People coming over to Britain to do manual, menial jobs for very little money, because that's all they're good for. Well, that is not the truth. The truth about Poland is a great country with a great history. It may have had its problems to have dealt with for the sort of 70 years or so after the war. But if you go to Poland, you'll discover a vibrant country full of really, hard-working, go-getting people. And this is perhaps a sample of what Soviet domination does for your country. What we saw was places, Krakow is a beautiful, beautiful place. And if you ever get the chance to visit there, go and see it. And yes, go and see Auschwitz, but also go and see the salt mine. The salt mine is just beautiful. It seems like an odd thing to go and see a salt mine, but you go down in this lift, and when you get down there, you see all the amazing caverns that have been carved out, but then they've been carved into, the main sort of thing people go to see is a cathedral carved out of the salt underground. You go and see the main square in Krakow. You listen to the trumpet call with its history. I'll not go into that just now. The castle, the river. It's a stunning, stunning place, all surrounded by a garden called the Planty. Anyway, there's also some great restaurants. If you ever go to Krakow, if you ever get the chance, there's two restaurants that I recommend. Pod Wavelem, under the castle, under the Wavelem Castle. And if you're hungry, that's the place to go. You'll never eat everything that you order. It's just not possible. And the other one is Pod Baradem under the bridge, which is just over the road, funnily enough. It's a fine dining experience. The waiters wear red patent leather shoes, and they've got long white aprons, and very smart. Food is excellent, really good game, and things like wild boar and stuff like that. Again, remarkably good value for money, or at least it was when we were there. I suspect prices will rise rapidly as people take care. But anyway, the point of all of this is Poland is not a rough, poor country. It's a country of really good people who are getting there. And one of the reasons why I say the prices will go up is because you've only got to go there once. You have to go back twice, and you have to go back again. It's just one of those sort of places. So where am I going with all of this, and why is this on a knife channel? Well, this is an example of what Polish craftsmanship is really worth. This is modern Polish craftsmanship. This knife here is actually an entry-level piece from a maker called Bartosz Herman. Herman Knives is the trade name, but his name is Bartosz. And they are sold, I don't know if exclusively, but mostly through a company called Polish Custom Knives. So you go on the Polish Customs Knife website and you will find that he does a number of different models. The Sting, I think, if it wasn't the original one, I think it was there or thereabouts, and it certainly was the basic knife, and this is the Sting. And the most basic version is the same as this, only without the blue anodization. And personally, I probably would go without the blue anodization, but we'll come to that in a minute. But there are others that he makes, the Dragonfly, and I can't remember the others because I'm brained a bit thin. But anyway, he sent one of these Stings to Nick Shabazz a little while ago, and Nick was very taken with them, and he's recently just bought a Sting in with Timascus scales and a Damacore blade. And if you like this knife, go and have a look at that. In some ways, it becomes a knife that you wouldn't want to carry because it's just over the top. This one here is well, I carry it. It's a usable, worthwhile knife. It's not just jewellery. But that being said, it is a very, very nice knife. Now, as I say, this is the entry level, and I believe it comes in around £600. It's about $600 as well. It's inevitable that it's going to be around that sort of level. The one that Nick Shabazz just got, I think, was something like $1,500 or thereabouts. Now, in some ways, it's sort of standard modern fare for a folding knife, in that we have titanium scales. We have, in this case, an M390 blade, which hopefully you'll be able to see that. I can't see if that's in focus or not, but it's a liner lock. I assume that the liner spring is steel, but I don't know that. I've never taken it to bits. But it's not just the fact that it's of good and modern materials. It's the fact that it's beautifully made. There's an awful lot of time and effort has gone into this knife that is above and beyond. One might expect a titanium knife, certainly at this sort of price. But what we've got here is incredible, beautiful machining. So it's machined all the way along its length. It's not in straight lines. It's a nice sort of pattern that gets tighter towards the middle and fans out like a sort of rising sun towards each end. It's got a proprietary tooled pivot. Now, Nick Shabazz didn't like that, and he said something about it. So it's like kicking him in the crutch and then giving him a bag of ice. So, they've given you the tool to take apart. I actually quite like it, because I don't take my knives to bits all the time. And the fact that it doesn't have a nasty big Torx head on it, I think is actually quite a nice thing. The reverse to that is it's got a plain, flat back to that screw. Now, on the higher end ones, that screw is also machined beautifully as well. And I would perhaps rather have that proprietary tool. And I can see why it was a design choice in the first place. Again, one could criticise this or see it as a strength, but these screws here on the tail end are screwed right the way through from the other side. Now, screwing into titanium, again, if you take your knives to bits all the time, there is a risk that you ruin a thread, and I don't think you're going to be able to repair those threads. If you ruin one of those, I don't know what you would do other than perhaps drill it out and fit a slightly larger screw. But you don't take your knives to bits all the time, and if you do, you don't over-tighten them. You have to be very careful. On the other side, two of the screws are hidden under the clip. It's sort of slightly a shame that these two screws are visible. There probably is a way to have avoided that, but I'm not quite sure what it would have been. But it does mean that in order to take the knife to bits, you have to remove the clip first. And that has its own problems because this screw here goes all the way through to that side. And so you have to sort of reassemble it in a bit of a weird way. But as I say, I don't take my knives to bits all the time. You've also got these two screws showing through from where the liner lock is put in. Now, they're harder to strip if they go all the way through. If they enter blind holes, it's actually easier to over-tighten them and destroy things. So it's probably better that they come all the way through. But what he has done here, which I haven't got it handy, but is in contrast. The Benchmade 940 screws all the way through in the same way, but the Benchmade 940 screws just show us the end of the screw. What he's done here is he's polished each one to a nice little dome, and it becomes part of the design. It's not just an unsatisfactory way of finishing off the screws. He's actually brought it into the design and made it actually part of his sort of almost like his trademark, in the same way as with quiet carry, and I said this before, and I'm not sure it would have come over very well. They have the little 4-hole trademark. Now he's got his little 3-dome studs. Now they're not the same in any respect, but at the same time they kind of, he kind of works in the same sort of way. You look at that and it's become an attractive thing. Those holes are just there purely as a trademark, as decoration. These ones actually are doing something, but they also look like a decoration, and a very attractive one at that. We have a backspacer here, again titanium, and it has these little standoffs. Now I haven't taken this to bits, but I understand from Nick Shabatz that if you do take this to bits, those little standoffs are each little machined little metal rings, and putting it all back together, it becomes a little bit fraught, particularly as I say this screw here holds on the pocket clip, but it also holds in these pieces. Now I haven't taken it to bits, and I don't know. I understand in newer models that that's all changed, which is probably for the better in terms of mountability, demountability, but in terms of just looking good, this looks good. It really looks good. The backspace has a bit of a machined end termination to it there as well. When my wife saw it, she thought that was a sort of maybe a tool or something you pulled out to do something with, but it's purely decorative, I believe. Turn it over to the non-show side. As I say, the screw at the top is just flat. I think if you buy higher end models, and maybe newer models, I don't know, then it's machined with a nice pattern on it, a little swirly pattern. You have a machined titanium clip. It's cut out behind so that it gives you more space, but the clip can still sit fairly close to the knife and not create great big hot spots. It is a wee bitty pokey, and you can poke that through material at the end. I have done that once, but it's also, if I can show this, oh here we are, it's machined flat under the clip termination so that it slides over your clothes. Although actually I have to say, because this pattern is linear, running end to end here, it actually does slide in and out relatively easily, but that clip being quite long and with a decent bit of spring to it, does hold well in your pocket. Now, it's a flipper running on ball bearings. It has a unfailable action. I always struggle with flippers, and the very fact that I can do this every time may not seem particularly remarkable, but I have to tell you that to me it is wholly remarkable. I usually struggle very much with flippers. I have to try and give them a bit of wrist. That's because I don't have the ability to sort of give that the sort of drive that it needs to work. But this one, the detent is so perfect that when you press on there, it just opens. And what does it open to? Well, it opens, first of all, it's a liner lock. The liner itself is slightly more cut out on this side of the handle so that you can get in there easily. Liner itself release has a milled edge which is anodized, so I suppose the spring may well be titanium as well. I was assuming it was steel, but as I look at it, I'm thinking that's anodized blue as well to match. So it may well be that it's titanium as well, and obviously it's held in by 2 screws, which we saw the heads of on the other side. It releases as well as it opens, and it has a good drop shut action. Keep your fingers out of the way of that, I think. Now, being as I'm having to do this left-handed, you can't get quite the full experience that you would get as a right-handed person, but it certainly works. And now, what have we got for a blade? Well, if we look on the front side first, it's a stone-washed blade, which doesn't show fingerprints, and despite the fact this has been quite a well-used knife, because it didn't come to me first. It was originally sent to Paddy and Paddy's potato peelers, and it's been moved on around a few people before it came to me. It is pretty much mark-free. There's a couple of bits of ooze on there that I hadn't noticed till I looked at it on the big screen, but that's just stuff that would wipe off. I don't believe it's ever been sharpened, although I have stropped it because it was starting to lose its edge, but it certainly wasn't by any means blunt. It's one of these things when you look at it and you think there's nothing to see, and in many ways that's because it's just so flawlessly done. The edge grind is perfect, the thinness behind the edge is good. It's a flat ground, plunge grind is lovely. This little curve at the top is just beautifully done. A nice little sharpening choil, but nothing. It doesn't look obvious. Sometimes you look at like Falknermans, you've got this sort of U shape cut out that looks like it was done as a bit of an afterthought. This is clearly designed this way. The way these angles all run together, the flipper becomes a little finger guard to stop you sliding out onto that blade. Is not only beautiful but functional. It's function and form, both. And when we turn it over and we have a look at the other side, we'll see that it is made of Böhler M390 steel. M390 is a Austrian steel, so that's why it's common in Europe, where a lot of American knives have 20CV, which is pretty much the same metallurgy as M390, but it's made by CPM in America, whereas this is made by Böhler in Austria. So very, very nice, very, very nice knife. A little bit of distal taper, but the distal taper doesn't start till really quite far out here. So we have a good solid backbone to the knife, and it comes down to a nice little, very sort of pokey point at the end, which is it's not been sharpened much, so it's kept that nice pokey point. Looking lovely. One thing I did forget to say when you're flipping it open, if I just close this again, now I can't get it to close. As I say, I've got very, very dodgy hands. Oh, shut itself by itself. On the back here, where we have the flipper, it's again machined out. So there's somewhere for the flesh of your finger to go when you open it. Just a nice touch. Now, when I first got it, when I had the criticism I had two criticisms of it. And one was I didn't like the noise of it. I thought it sounded cheap. But actually, the more I've used it, got it to fail. Now, the reason that failed is because the fat of my hand was over the end of the blade. When it's not, it fires every time. And I've come to love this sound because it's been a while. But just listen, clunk, and it's in, and it locks solid every time. There's no danger that that's gonna fail on you. When you want this knife, when you need it, as long as you keep your fingers out the way, fires every time. Beautiful, beautiful thing. The other thing I criticised it for, and I'm still slightly critical of it, is that the anodization seems to sort of be fading. Now, if you clean it back up, it does tend to come back, but I do think it is wearing. It's certainly wearing on the edges. Personally, I think I probably would have just gone for the plain grey version, but that may just be me. I do like blue. Blue is a good colour. I don't bring politics onto here, but it's my colour when it comes to politics. So, there we are. Now, what am I going to say? This knife came in just a grey slip. It did come with a certificate of authenticity, and it did come with the tool for the pivot and a patch and some various things. If you buy the high-end ones, they come in a wooden box, where the inside of the box is carved out to precisely fit the outline of your knife, which is really, really nice. But I suppose if you're paying 1,500 for a knife, it really ought to come well packaged. Can't help thinking that there's at least 100, if not 200, in the box. Which, you don't carry the box, you carry the knife. But there we are. So I'm just trying to think. I don't think I have much more to say about this. I think I've gone through everything I wanted to say. The main point I'm trying to make, though, is that Poland may have an image to some of being a sort of slightly backward agricultural sort of country, high heavy industry, Gdansk shipworks and things like that sort of country. But the truth is, that was what people tried to create. Hitler in particular, and Stalin to some extent, tried to make Poland be that country. And I think that's because they didn't want a strong country on their borders. This is perhaps more indicative of what Poland is today. It's a country that's forward-looking, that it may, in its industry, it can be as high-tech as anywhere in the world. Its shipbuilding is still fantastic, unlike British shipbuilding, which is rather mixed. And it's also a country of beauty and style, and certainly worth a visit. I don't work for the Polish Tourist Board, but perhaps I should. I certainly could work for the Krakow Tourist Board in a heartbeat. It's a beautiful, beautiful city if you ever get a chance to visit. This isn't from, Herman's not from Krakow. It just happens to be the only bit of Poland that I have visited. I visited Poland, that as a city, and then the drive up to Rzeszów and then up to Janów Lubelski was it's very, very beautiful. Janów Lubelski is a lovely place if you're going to get married. It's a great place to get married. We went there for a wedding. We were there for 3 days. The wedding takes 3 days, and really, really good fun. Brilliant place. And if I ever get the chance to go to another Polish wedding, I'll be straight there. That couple are back in Edinburgh, and we're still good friends. They're wonderful people. They have a little baby now, and a couple of huskies. So, yeah, I think this knife tells you a little bit about Poland, and it tells you what Poland is, and defines it as very much different to perhaps what it might have been, have a reputation as. It's a modern, vibrant, Central European country. So anyway, that's whittled on for a long, long time. But if you like this stuff, please give it a thumbs up. If you like Poland, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of this stuff, please subscribe. And remember to ring the bell or you won't get notifications of what's happening. Thank you very much. Goodbye.